The sky above Heap City was the color of rusted tin, its haze forever streaked by the smoke of smoldering plastics. From horizon to horizon stretched mountains of rubbish, heaving, groaning ranges of broken appliances, cracked screens, crushed cans, and skeletal frameworks of extinct civilizations. Upon their precarious ridges, humans had learned to live like barnacles, clinging to a sinking ship. Timber was scarce, stone non-existent, but scrap was infinite, so houses were riveted from dented car doors and soda can shingles. Footpaths were plank bridges laid atop shifting hills of debris, and every child was taught from birth to listen for the telltale creak beneath their feet that meant a garbage quake was coming. Lyra Candleborn stood on the rim of a particularly steep slope in District 5, her cheeks smeared with black polymer dust. She held a cracked plastic doll in her gloved hand, its hair matted, its circuitry silent. Somewhere in its torso might lie a nostalgia chip, a sliver of pre-collapse memory technology that, when slotted into a playback visor, could conjure full sensory worlds long vanished. People traded chips as currency, reliving birthdays under unmarred skies or first kisses beside clean oceans. More valuable than any metal, nostalgia chips were the last ghosts of the world that had failed. Her younger brother Ash balanced beside her on a girder, a pickaxe slung over one shoulder. "If a quake hits now," he muttered, peering down into a gaping vent shaft below them, "this whole ridge will slide and take the West Viaduct with it." Lyra sniffed the air. The scent of melted vinyl was stronger than usual, almost sweet. "We'll be quick," she said, knowing speed was an illusion in the garbage seas, but needing to reassure him. "The council's paying triple for toy cores this quarter. We find a couple of chips and we can buy filters for Ma's air mask." Ash nodded, face drawn but trusting. Together they descended the slope, stabilizing themselves with hooked poles. Around them, scavengers in patched cloaks stirred the trash with electromagnets, hoping for mid-century hard drives or the protein bars sometimes sealed within military coffers. Far below, sump fires roared where methane pockets ignited, sending pillars of flame into the dim afternoon. Garbage quakes often followed such bursts, the sudden emptiness forming sinkholes that collapsed whole neighborhoods. Lyra reached the bottom of the vent shaft, where a compacted strata of pre-collapsed toys was rumored to lie. The shaft walls, once part of an old climate mall, were lined with buckled ducts that resonated like organ pipes in the wind. She knelt beside a mound of plastic figurines. Their pastel colors had faded to diseased hues, but she still recognized them from flickering salvage films. Heroic space rangers, cartoon princesses, cybernetic dinosaurs. Using a scalpel, she sliced open the back of the doll she held. Inside, along a delicate mesh of copper traces, gleamed a wafer no larger than a fingernail. Nostalgia chip. Her pulse quickened. She eased it free with tweezers, then powered it with her thumb-sized test cell. A holographic shimmer spread above her glove. A sunlit living room, a birthday cake erupting with candles. The recorded voice of a mother singing off-key. Lyra shut it off quickly. Nostalgia was addictive, and more than one digger had wasted entire days drowning in borrowed yesterdays until a quake buried them. She tucked the chip into a leaded pouch. "One," she whispered. They kept hunting. Ash found a voice-controlled teddy with a corroded battery pack. Inside was another chip, still intact. Lyra unearthed a portable gaming device, screen shattered, but memory drives shielded beneath a scarecrow of wires. Chip number 3. Each discovery felt like plucking pennies from the eyes of history, stealing secrets it never meant to keep. Halfway through the hall, a tremor quivered underfoot. Dust cascaded off ductwork. Lyra froze, palm flattened against the trash, feeling for the rhythm. It wasn't the rhythmic churn of the gravitational compactors in the distant recycling towers. It was deeper, a subterranean growl. "Quake," Ash whispered. Before they could scramble, the trash field undulated like a stormy sea. Lyra stumbled, gripping a rusted beam. Up above, a crane that had stood motionless for decades groaned, its boom sweeping in unwanted animation. A cascade of shattered glass thundered down. The vent shaft walls, long warped, began to buckle further, showering rivets. "Out!" Lyra shouted. They climbed, but the slope, now fluid, betrayed each footstep, turning footholds into slides. Waves of rubbish rose and crashed, emitting metallic shrieks. Above the tumult, sirens wailed from the watchtowers, red flares signaling evacuation. Ash slipped, tumbling onto his side. The ground beneath him sank, revealing an unseen void. Lyra lunged, catching his wrist as the pile collapsed, threatening to swallow him whole. She braced herself on a protruding pipe, gritting teeth while shards of plastic raked her calf. With a heave, she hauled her brother up onto a relatively stable refrigerator shell. They did not stop to breathe. Quakes rarely granted that courtesy. Minutes of scrambling, sliding, grabbing at anything firm enough to hold their weight passed in frantic blur. They emerged near the surface as the last tremors faded, lungs raw, skin stinging. Around them, the landscape had changed, as though an unseen sculptor had reshaped mounds into new, perilous peaks. The west viaduct they feared losing was gone. Its skeletal walkway snapped in two, the halves dangling into mist. In silence, the siblings looked at the void where familiar ground had been. Then, as the first drops of toxic rain began to fall, they hurried for cover inside a gutted shipping container. Later, while acidic drizzle drummed the steel roof, Lyra inventoried their pouches, 3 chips. It seemed meager for the danger faced, yet the shimmering memories inside might purchase weeks of clean water and medicine. She glanced at Ash, who sat hugging his knees, eyes distant. "What did you see?" he asked suddenly. She knew he didn't mean on the climb. The chip showed a party, balloons, a grandmother serving pie. I could almost taste cinnamon. She tried to smile. "Better than breathing melted polymer, right?" He closed his eyes. "Think the council will ever build a real shelter? Walls, filters that never clog, ground that doesn't move." She wanted to say yes. Instead, "We survive. That's what we do." Back in Heap City's central district, the market square was a ring of stacked shipping crates, each vendor's stall lit by salvaged LED strips. The air buzzed with generators and the clipped negotiations of scavengers trading their day's finds. Council guard towers loomed above, automated railguns tracking for rogue clans. Garbage quakes bred desperation. Desperation bred raids. Lyra and Ash queued before the appraisal kiosk, a repurposed subway turnstile, staffed by archivists in white polymer smocks. They surrendered their chips into scanning trays. The machine hummed, projecting data onto cracked glass. 94% integrity, said the archivist, eyebrows lifting. "That's pristine. 2 rations of medicinal filters, 3 water cartridges, and 15 carbon credits, each." He wiped grime from the next chip. Impressive haul for such young diggers. Lyra inclined her head, taking the chit. She could feel eyes on her from other scavengers, envy sharpening like knives. She guided Ash away. At the filtration depot, they exchanged half their earnings for a week's supply and selected a new respirator for their mother. The rest of the credits she tucked into a belt pouch, hiding it under her jacket's fold. Wealth here was a flashing beacon for cutthroats. That evening, they crossed sway bridges to level 8, where their hut clung to a slag face. Inside, their mother, Jessa, lay on a hammock made from seatbelts sewn together. Her lungs whistled with microplastic scarring. Lyra fitted the new mask over her face. A faint green charge lit, and Jessa's breathing evened. She squeezed Lyra's hand, gratitude in tired eyes, then drifted to sleep. Ash collapsed onto a pile of fabric scraps, exhausted. Lyra eased herself down beside the makeshift window. Beyond, the refuse dunes rippled under moonlight, silvering the chaos into something almost beautiful. She fingered the last unused chip, her share to keep. Temptation tugged. She pressed it into her playback visor. A rush of sensory reality flooded her. Children racing through a sprinkler on a suburban lawn, grass cool under bare feet, a dog barking joyfully. Lyra gasped, tears burning unbidden. When the memory ended 90 seconds later, the silence of the shanty hurt. She removed the visor, heart aching with a longing for a world she had never known. The next morning, a council summons boomed from loudspeakers. All licensed diggers were to convene in the central amphitheater. Unheard rumors spread fast. The recent quakes had destabilized the lower range, threatening Heap City's foundations. If garbage quakes hollowed out enough load-bearing layers, the entire settlement might sink into its own rot. Councilor Vex, a tall woman whose exoskeletal brace lent her insectile stature, addressed the crowd from a dais welding sparks of authority. "Citizens," she declared, voice amplified, "Heap City endured storms, fires, plague, but the earth beneath us erodes. We need foundational anchors, reinforced pylons, to keep our home from collapse. The raw materials exist below in the deep strata, where pre-collapse alloys lie uncorroded. Yet the depths are unstable. We require volunteers." Silence followed. Everyone knew the deep strata was mythic and murderous. Zones where trash compressed to near stone, where methane pockets exploded without warning, where ancient AI defense drones occasionally awoke like irritated dragons. To descend there was to gamble with death. Councilor Vex shifted tactics. All volunteers will receive elevated citizen status, quadruple rations, and first housing rights in the sky platforms once they are erected. Murmurs rose. Elevated status meant clean water without trade, medical care, education passes, salvation. Lyra felt Ash's gaze. Their mother's lungs were failing. Elevated status could save her. Lyra raised her hand. Ash followed. They were not alone. 24 volunteers stepped forward. Veterans with prosthetic limbs, young risk-takers, a few desperate families. Among them stood Dax Loom, a lanky engineer rumored to have built half the city's bridges. He met Lyra's eyes, nodding. Preparations began that afternoon. The team was issued reinforced hazard suits, pieced from firefighter gear, and armored elbow plates. Each carried climbing spikes, seismic readers, nutrient paste, and for morale, a palm-sized playback visor. Nostalgia chips, after all, could fortify courage. They descended through service tunnels, ladders welded from bicycle frames, stairwells carved into compressed trash. Heat rose, oppressive. Walls perspired with chemical ooze. The air thickened, sweet with decay. At one landing, they found the remains of an earlier expedition. Warped helmets, cracked oxygen canisters, bones bleached by solvents. Lyra whispered a vow. By the second day, natural light vanished. Their helmet lamps revealed cavities of surreal beauty. Stalactites formed from dripped wax, shimmering cliffs of compacted glass bottles. They bivouacked on a ledge above a ravine of crushed cars. Lyra couldn't sleep. She watched Dax calibrate a seismic probe. "Why did the quakes worsen?" she asked. Dax tapped his tablet. Pressure, gas buildup, but mainly memory load. She frowned. Memory load. He shrugged. Every nostalgia chip we extract removes a stabilizing element. Pre-collapsed toys were injected with memory alloys that expand microscopically, distributing weight. Strip enough chips, the surrounding substrate microfractures, like pulling keystones from an arch. Lyra's stomach lurched. We're causing the quakes? In part. He looked weary. But people cling to the past. Council, trades, and dreams. Hard to stop. His words followed her in uneasy sleep. On the fourth day, they reached the target layer. The deep strata unfurled as a cavernous plain of fused steel. Somewhere beneath, Council schematics promised high-strength pylon rods. The team spread out, sonic drills whining. Lyra hammered stakes, Ash monitoring tremor readouts. Hours passed. They located a seam, a buried highway overpass, its supports intact. Using arc cutters, they sliced beams free. A trove of alloy. Spirits rose. Then the tremor began. Small at first, but rapid. Seismic meters spiked red. Gas vents howled as pressure found exits. "Evac! Evac!" Dax shouted. They loaded alloy bundles onto sleds, retreating toward the shaft. The ground convulsed. A wall of compacted refrigerator units ruptured, disgorging freon clouds. A salvage sled flipped. 2 volunteers disappeared in the breach. Lyra yanked Ash aside as a pipe lashed like a whip. A thunderous crack split the air. High above, domino collapses cascaded down shaft throats. She realized with horror. Their ascent route would be gone before they reached it. Dax's voice crackled over comms. "Secondary hole, east quadrant, go!" They sprinted across a fluttering plain of plastic sheets that billowed like sails. Dead drones stirred under the trembling, their red optics flickering awake. One rose, rotors whining, ancient programming seeking threats. It locked onto the moving humans and opened fire with micro-nail rounds. Sparks erupted. Lyra dove behind a dishwasher carcass. Ash slipped and slid toward a fissure. She crawled, ignoring ricochets, grabbed his pack strap, hauled him up. Dax lobbed a sonic lure. The drone chased, firing at the decoy until collapsing into a pit. They reached the secondary shaft, a narrow chimney rising through pressboard layers. Ladders were missing. Only a fraying cable remained. Dax clipped his ascender, teeth clenched. Lighten loads, 1 alloy bundle each or none. Sacrifice or salvation. Lyra fingered the last nostalgia chip she carried for courage. If memory alloys mattered, returning them might help stability. An irrational hope sprouted. She rummaged her pouch, retrieving all 3 chips from yesterday's appraisal. They'd kept duplicates to barter on the journey, and the spare she cherished. "I'm dumping these," she said. Ash stared. "We need their worth. We need the ground to hold." She tossed them into the quake-racked depths. A pang of regret pierced her as they vanished, but she felt something like relief. The climb was agony. The cable groaned, strands snapping. 1 volunteer fell, screaming until the sound was swallowed. Lyra's arms burned. She recited the sprinkler memory to herself, each detail a rung, until at last her gloves touched the fractured ledge of subsurface level 3. They pulled Dax up last. Behind him, the shaft imploded, sealing shut. Breathing hard, the survivors found themselves in a forgotten station. Misted green light seeped from overhead vents. Sunlight, faint, filtered through layers of detritus. They were closer to the surface than expected. A stairwell ascended through collapsed ticket booths. Outside, Heap City was in chaos. The quake had toppled cranes, split shanties. People clawed through wreckage searching for kin. Yet the city still stood. Perhaps the worst collapse had been averted. Councilor Vex met them near the market plaza, exoskeleton sparking. She counted the alloy bundles. Is this all? Enough for 2 pylons, Dax said. More trips needed. Lyra stepped forward, grime-streaked. Maybe not. We need to stop mining nostalgia chips. They're part of the ground's integrity. Vex's expression hardened. That rumor again? Chips are our economy. They're also our undoing. Lyra spoke louder so the crowd gathering could hear. Quakes follow heavy chip harvests. We felt it. Saw partial collapses where chips were thick. She gestured to the alloy bundles. We have materials to reinforce, but if we keep stealing the past, no amount of metal will hold the future. Murmurs. Some scoffed. Some nodded. Ash added, voice shaking. She threw away chips that could have bought a year's rations, and the tremor lessened. It was objectively coincidence, but stories forge belief faster than fact. The crowd buzzed anew, many clutching playback visors, suddenly aware of their fragile world. Counselor Vex scanned faces, calculating. Power, here, stemmed from consensus. A moratorium? She declared at last. Temporary suspension on deep chip extraction. We will test structural impacts. In the meantime, volunteers who relinquish chips for reintegration will receive credit compensation. It was a compromise, but the first fissure in the Council's authority over memory commerce. Weeks passed. Engineers forged pylons, driving them through unstable layers like iron stakes pinning parchment. The moratorium held. Scavengers still brought up toys, but chips were collected in sealed repositories, their memory alloys analyzed for stabilizing fill instead of traded. A black market sprouted, of course, yet public sentiment shifted. Survival trumped nostalgia. Lyra and Ash moved their mother into a provisional sky platform, scaffolded above the highest ridge. Clean wind flowed through filters. Jess's lungs strengthened enough for her to sing snatches of old lullabies. One evening, she asked Lyra about the sprinkler memory. Lyra described the cool grass, the blue sky, the dog's bark, and found that speaking it aloud hurt less than she expected. Dax visited, arm in sling from a cable burn, to deliver news. Seismic readings down 30% since the hold on chip harvests. We reinforce 5 more pylons next month. City might last another century. Lyra watched the sunset smear purple across smog. Long enough for children to grow without masks? Maybe. He smiled. You could help with the design. Council wants citizen engineers. She considered. The past had its allure, but designing the future, anchoring not just trash but hope, seemed a worthier addiction. That night, garbage quakes whispered far beyond the perimeter, distant enough to feel like thunder on the horizon. Heap City shuddered, but did not fall. In newfound stillness, families crawled onto rooftops and, for the first time in years, told stories not of what once was, but of what might yet be built atop the ruins. Stories that needed no chip to remember, only the fragile, durable faith of the living.